This is a true crime story that has haunted Japan. It's the case of Takahiro Shiraishi, often called the Twitter killer. His actions were shocking and left many wondering about the darkness that can lie within individuals. Today we'll delve into Takahiro's life, his motivations, and the horrifying events that unfolded. We will explore how someone can fall so deep into darkness. The events involving Takahiro Shiraishi took place in Zama, a city in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan. Zama is a quiet suburban area, known for its peaceful residential neighborhoods and its proximity to Tokyo. It's the kind of place where life moves slowly and crime is rare, which makes these events even more disturbing. Takahiro Shiraishi was born on May 18, 1992, in the bustling city of Zama, Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan. He was the firstborn son of his family, and his mother, who had high hopes for him, named him Takahiro, meaning prosperity and nobility. These words carried a lot of weight and hope. But what happens when a person does not live up to these expectations? Takahiro's childhood was relatively normal. He grew up in a comfortable home, but things began to change as he entered his teenage years. He felt out of place in school and struggled with feelings of loneliness and depression. This emotional turmoil started to shape his views and behaviors. As a teenager, Takahiro's mental health began to decline. He experienced feelings of sadness that he couldn't shake off. Instead of seeking help, he began to retreat into a world of dark thoughts. He developed an interest in death, and this fascination would eventually spiral out of control. After high school, Takahiro took on a job as a scout. In Japan, scouts are often tasked with finding young women to work in hostess bars. It may seem harmless, but this job can be very manipulative. Many scouts use deceitful tactics to lure vulnerable women. Takahiro was no exception. He would often pretend to care for these women, while actually viewing them as tools to fulfill his own desires. Isn't it alarming how people can use charm to hide their true intentions? In 2017, Takahiro's life took a terrifying turn. He was on probation for a previous crime when he began to act on his darkest fantasies. He turned to social media, particularly Twitter, to find victims. Takahiro looked for women who were troubled, who were struggling with their mental health. He believed these women were easier to manipulate. He targeted those who expressed feelings of hopelessness and despair. His first known victim was a young woman named Allison. I want to mention that, out of respect for the families, all the victim names used in this video have been changed. The real identities of the victims are being kept private to honor their memory and protect the privacy of their loved ones. He convinced her to meet him under false pretenses of friendship. Tragically, once they met, he brutally murdered her. This horrific act marked the beginning of a series of heinous crimes. Imagine being lured by someone who pretends to care for you, only to find yourself in a life-threatening situation. It's terrifying, isn't it? After Allison, Takahiro went on to kill 8 more individuals. His method was gruesome. He would often strangle his victims, leading to their death, and he engaged in acts of necrophilia with some. He carefully crafted a deceptive narrative around his actions, claiming that he was not a criminal, but simply fulfilling his desires. During his trial, he exhibited a shocking lack of remorse. He even stated that he thought murder was acceptable as long as he was not caught. This disturbing mindset reveals a chilling truth about some individuals. They can detach from their actions and see others as mere objects for their pleasure. Have you ever thought about what it means to truly empathize with others? The trial of Takahiro Shiraishi garnered widespread media attention. Many people were shocked by his nonchalant demeanor and his apparent lack of empathy for his victims. His defense team attempted to argue a controversial claim known as consensual homicide, suggesting that his victims had consented to their deaths. This argument was deeply flawed. It ignored the reality of coercion and manipulation. How can one truly consent when they are in a vulnerable state? This raised important questions about the legal system and how it handles such cases. When asked about his motivations, Takahiro claimed he had to kill to avoid being caught for SA. This distorted reasoning highlights the dangers of a lack of accountability. Takahiro's obsession with death extended beyond just his actions. He claimed to have researched cannibalism, not out of a desire to consume human flesh, but to understand other criminal methods and how to avoid getting caught. He even mentioned wanting to make his victims' deaths appear as if they had suspended themselves, displaying a terrifying level of premeditation. This raises questions about the mind of a killer. What drives someone to such extreme lengths? Takahiro also mentioned that he found pleasure in the thrill of committing these crimes. This distorted sense of excitement reveals a deep-seated issue, a disconnect from reality that allowed him to see his victims as mere objects to fulfill his fantasies. Have you ever encountered someone who seemed to lack empathy? In 2020, Takahiro was sentenced to death for his crimes. Even during the sentencing, he displayed little remorse for his actions. He expressed some regret for killing certain victims, but only because it led to his capture, not for the loss of life. His case sparked conversations around mental health, the responsibilities of social media, and the need for better support systems for those who are struggling. As we reflect on this tragic story, it's essential to consider the societal factors that can lead someone down such a dark path. How can we prevent future tragedies? Comment down below.